Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are very solid all round. They're very experimental, try lots of different things, and they always turn out pretty good actually in my experience. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I think I haven't had from them before, but don't quote me 100% on that because I can't remember completely off the top of my head. But it's a style that I very much enjoy, one that I don't get to review all that often on the channel anymore. And yeah, it's also one of this brewery's latest releases through its Systembolaget here in Sweden as well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing the Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. But for this review, we are going to return to the wonderful Beerbliotek. So this particular beer is called Purely Selfish Reasons. It's number 345 in the Beerbliotek catalogue because these guys do lots of different recipes. Comes in at 9.8% ABV, and this one is a Belgian-style triple. So yeah, not all that often we get to review triples on the channel these days, especially Swedish brewed ones, although we did have one maybe a month or two ago, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokalt och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget in Sweden for February of 2022. But yeah, definitely cool to see some bigger and heavier beers being released regularly from Beerbliotek through Systembolaget, of course. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. Potentially my first triple from Beerbliotek. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Beerbliotek before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So just go into the homepage, use the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the local area that you search for, they will pop up there. Otherwise, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You will find this one in the Swedish playlist along with many other things. And there are many playlists from other countries there as well that you can check out. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you once again a little bit about Beerbliotek. So, Beerbliotek, as I mentioned to you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded back in 2013 by a multinational group of friends. This is Adam Norman, who is from Australia, Richard Bull, who's from New Zealand, he's a Kiwi, Anders Hedlund, who is of course Swedish, and then Darl Denecker, who comes from South Africa. So Adam and Richard ran Bar Doppio in Gothenburg, and they'd been homebrewing together from about 2011. But Darl and Anders were regular customers at the bar, and they often just used to talk about different styles of beer together with Richard and Adam. And you know, eventually Darryl joined in with the home brewing, and then in 2012 Anders joined in as well, and they decided to take their home brewing project to the commercial level. So the original brewery that they had was in the old Klippan Sugar building, which is a very nice old building, very close to the old Carnegie Brewery in Gothenburg, one of the most famous breweries in Sweden apparently. But their original brew kit they had was from Brewfab in Scotland, and it was one of the old Brewdog kits from what I understand. But in their first year of operation, they apparently brewed 38 different varieties of beer, and a lot of their beers are just brewed in very small batches because they want to stick to their kind of home brewing roots. And so it's quite rare that they brew the same beer. They've got no fixed range, but there are beers that have become, you know, fairly regular, to be honest with you. There are ones like a passion for gingers, some of the black IPAs have been very popular, the Eternal Darkness and the Eternal Dankness, they release those every year and tweak the recipes a little bit. But yeah, they don't have a particularly fixed kind of core range of beers, if you like. They're always developing new recipes. A little bit later on in 2015, they opened a second brewery in Kungston, which is where they have their tap room and now run their main brewing operations. They brewed sour beers for a short period in the old brewery, and they began working on a barrel aging project in the new facility around this time as well. But over the years, they've continued to develop different recipes and expand the company, and then in 2018, Fabian and Victor Helte joined the company as investors, and then in 2022 they were joined by Palle Stenberg, who runs the Nudie jeans brand, which is quite popular here in Sweden. Quite a few of my colleagues have Nudie jeans. But the current brewmaster at the brewery is the Italian Riccardo Boff. He studied brewing and distilling at Heriot Watt in Edinburgh in Scotland, and then worked for Pilot Brewery in Scotland, Kramer Lee in Korea, and then he came to Gothenburg to work with Beerbliotek. But he joined Beerbliotek in late 2020, and then in early 2021, Beerbliotek went on to purchase a 750 litre distillery, and they started a spirits company which is called Wet City, and they released their gins through Systembolaget for the first time in August of that year. But the idea behind the name Beerbliotek is that they want to brew a wide variety of beers so that their customers can always learn something new about, you know, a different type of malt, a different hop, or a different kind of yeast or something like this. But they basically want to create the concept of a library but with beer, which has been you know, they really have achieved quite successfully over the years, I have to say. But as of February 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have released 355 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said, they always do pretty solid versions of whatever style it is that they're trying. Actually, I've had some really good beers from these guys over the years. You know, I'm sure we've had quadruples from them before. We've had a few different types of barley wines, wheat wines, rye wines, lots of different IPAs, a few imperial stouts and stuff like this. But yeah, I have noticed that they are putting a few different styles out there through Systembolaget at the moment, which is always nice to see. But yeah, like I say, that is all I can really tell you about Beerbliotek for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a little look at this one itself. So you can see this one is a little small 330 milliliter can, which was always the standard size for Beerbliotek actually, but in recent times they have been releasing some beers in half-litre cans as well. You can see on the top of the can there is Beerbliotek in the nice silver. On the side here you can see Beerbliotek number 345, purely selfish reasons. Like we said earlier, this one is a 9.8% triple. Oh, and I've just noticed here on the side they say Beerbliotek since 2013. And yeah, they've changed the Swedish mark on this one as well. Swedish craft beer. So yeah, they always used to have a little flag next to the pants sign from what I remember. But yeah, if memory serves me correctly, I think I paid about 60 Swedish krona for this beer, although I honestly can't remember the exact price of this, but 60 seems about right. So that's about €6, maybe about £5.50 sterling, $6.50 American, and for a 9.8% triple, you know, you can't really complain about that. But yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. And as I say, it's been quite a wee while since I've had a Belgian-style triple. Yeah, we say Belgian style because if it's not brewed in Belgium, then it's not, well, if it's not brewed in Belgium or the Netherlands or brewed by a Trappist brewery, I guess you have to say an Abbey style. I guess probably the correct term would be an Abbey style triple. But yeah, of course, the classic example of this style for me would be the Westmalle triple. And Triple Carmeliet is also quite a nice one as well, but I still need to review that for you on the channel. I've never done that. But yeah, anyway, I have to say, appearance-wise, this one looks pretty damn impressive. So before the head disappears, we can say that this one is poured with a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream-coloured head there. There's a few kind of medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid, but a few more smaller ones going further up. I'll just let you guys have a little look at that because we've got the lovely camera there which can actually show you it, but it looks very, very nice, I have to say. In terms of the colour of this beer, I have to say this is one of the slightly more amber-leaning triples that I've come across actually, which is kind of interesting. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, it's the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer as well. When it comes to triples, the thing we need to think about with this is that quite often Belgian triples will have some kind of brew sugar added into them. That's how the Belgian beers get so high in alcohol but maintain quite a light mouthfeel, because if you think about other beer styles of equal strength, usually they're thicker, and that's because the sugar is extracted from the malt grains rather than being added directly to the fermentation. So a little bit of technical brew stuff in there. But yeah, with this one, you can see 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But when it comes to the clarity of this beer, this one does actually have a little bit of a natural haze to it, but yeah, not much in the way of haziness otherwise. I just want to check the ingredients list of this one to see what's been added into it. So yeah, this one actually just says barley malt, and that's it. It doesn't say anything about brew sugar or anything else, so we'll just need to guess and see what's going on with this one from the flavour. So yeah, a bit surprised about that, because normally they tell you what kind of sugar and stuff they've put in these beers when it comes to the triples and quadruples and things. But yeah, in terms of the appearance, when you think about what style it is, this one is one of the darker triples I've come across, but it's certainly not out with the spectrum of possibility for a triple style. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one and see what it gives us. Very, very curious about this. Yeah, I have to say that does smell pretty damn nice actually. Yeah. So aroma wise, this strikes me, there's a lot of kind of dried fruit and kind of spice coming out of this one, which is kind of interesting. So lots and lots of kind of dry fruity character, good little bit of breadiness in there, wee bit of yeastiness as well. But again, one thing I've always found about Nordic versions of triples and quadruples, they always come across as being a little bit cleaner than their Belgian or Dutch or Trappist counterparts actually. These, whenever you find these beers brewed in different countries, they often just have a slightly different, they've always got the kind of right flavour profile, but they just have a little bit of a slightly different vibe to them. But this one for me comes across as very dry and fruity in character. There's a good little bit of hoppy note still in there, and you have just got a wee bit of the yeastiness. But as I say, the bready base of the beer and the yeasty base of the beer just isn't quite as it just isn't quite as heavy as I thought as I've seen from other examples of this style. But that's not to say it's not going to be a good beer. We'll need to taste it and see. But aroma wise, it is actually quite nice. But let's try and break this down and describe it a wee bit more in depth before we actually taste the thing. So, backbone of the beer. You can smell in this one, there's a little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. I'm also getting quite a little bit of cracker out of this one too. There's a good little bit of bready character also with this one, and it's kind of like a banana bread. So yeah, I would definitely say it's got a little bit of a banana bread kind of note to it. There's also a wee bit of a kind of bubblegummy type quality to this beer as well, a little bit of that candy bubblegummy thing, and that's something that I've quite often found with Hefeweizens. And sometimes Belgian wits, but this triple really does, it has a wee bit of an almost kind of wheaty type note to it. Like I say, fresh white bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker, a little touch of woodiness, some fluffy white bread in there, but it does have a little bit of that kind of banana bubblegummy type note to it. Yeah, I think that is really the backbone of the beer. Above that, there are a few other things kind of going on. You've got a little bit of a lighter bready character in there. It's almost got a wee bit of a, yeah, it's almost got a wee bit of a, say, it's almost got a wee bit of a, say, yeah, you've got quite a lot of yeast, as I say, you've got quite a lot of yeasty character coming out of this one, which is nice. And the yeasty character gives it a real, it's got a little bit of an almost kind of clovey spice to it, but you do have that kind of banana bready quality, and there's also that kind of bubblegummy sweetness that I was talking about too. But there's definitely little elements of there is definitely a little element of honey in this one. which I have to say I am quite enjoying. So yeah, little elements of honey in there. You've also got a little bit of that kind of concentrated, like oily thing that holds McVitie's digestive biscuit together. So yeah, definitely a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, a little bit of honey. I don't know if I go as far as saying there's a straight up caramel to this one, because like I say, it strikes me as being more kind of biscuity and like, you know, the oil that holds a biscuit together. It's kind of like that, but definitely honey for sure, and quite a concentrated, potent honey as well at that, I would say. But yeah, I think that covers the kind of malty and yeasty side of the beer actually. But when you sugar the beer up, you certainly get a little bit more kind of spice out of it, which I think is really quite interesting. So yeah, the way this beer goes together is really very nice. Yeah. On the, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer actually. But on the hoppy side of things, there is actually quite a little bit of stuff going on with this one on that regard. So on the hoppy side of things, you have got a little bit of, you do still have quite a little bit of hoppy character with this one. And this is the thing with a Belgian triple. You can age it a little bit, and of course the longer you keep the beer, the more the green component is going to drop out of it. I think when it comes to Belgian triples, they quite often tend to use something like German Hallertau or Tettnanger or maybe Czech Sats. They tend to use these kind of beers, or a local Belgian type hop, but it's not the most hop forward of beer. This is the main point we're driving at here. With a Belgian triple, you depending on how fresh it is, you will get a bit of green component, but with this one, it still is quite fresh actually. There's a little touch of earthiness in there. Yeah, there's a little touch of earthiness to it, but the green component, the green side of things, the floral notes are actually almost a little touch spicy, and you've got the grassy side in there, which is really quite bright and almost zesty, and that makes me wonder if it's been Czech Sats that have been used in this one. I know that Czech Sats are quite popular with Belgian-style beers actually, so there's quite a wee bit of a bright green component in this beer, I have to say, and I do quite appreciate that with this one. It's quite nice, but yeah, really lovely bright green component in this beer. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, I do like how this goes together. So yeah, you have got quite a nice bright green component to this. As I say, that will drop out the more that you drink of the beer. But I'm just sitting enjoying that, I have to say. Brain's gone a little bit dead as well, quite tired. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, this beer is kind of what you'd expect from the style too. You've got a lovely little bit of sultana in there, you know, the dry white, green, grapey characters. Good little bit of oily pear as well. And you've got a wee bit of a kind of fresh kind of green apple in there with this one. But also a little bit of that kind of lemony, zesty character as well. There are quite a few wee things going on in this beer, but it strikes me, the more I smell of it, it strikes me as quite an oily triple. At the same time, it's quite fresh and shows quite a little bit of green component, which is quite interesting too. But yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we try this one. So yeah, this one is called Purely Selfish Reasons, Beerbliotek beer number 345. A Belgian style triple, or yeah, Belgian or Abbey style triple, I guess we should say, at 9.8% ABV from Beerbliotek in Gothenburg. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty solid actually. It's not quite as sweet and smooth as some of the Trappist triples that you'll come across, like the Chimay Vite or the you know, the La Trappe triple, or even the Westmalle. But it's more an oily and kind of boozy triple, this one, I would definitely say that. But I think once you take a little bit of a bigger sip of this beer, it does start to yeah, once you take a little bit of a bigger sip of this beer, it really does start to show you a little bit more. Actually, it does kind of start to sweeten up, but it is quite boozy. I mean, yeah, normally the range of a triple can be from about 8.5 to maybe about 10 or so. So yeah, this is quite interesting for me, but you can tell with the malty character of this one too. I think that the sugar, the type of sugar that you have in this one, makes it really quite dark and boozy actually, but still a really interesting beer, I have to say. So thumbs up to Beerbliotek for doing something a little bit different, but definitely one of the boozier triples that I've come across during my reviews on the channel for sure. At the same time, it's very slick and oily, but we'll come to that a little bit later on when we look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, let's try and break this down a little bit and describe it a wee bit more kind of in depth, if you like. So middle third of your palate, the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of fresh, white bready bread crust coming out of this one, so you can feel that right away, forming the backbone of the beer. Above that though, you do get some of this kind of crackery note that I was talking about from the aroma. That's really quite obvious in this one, and potentially toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you're getting a wee bit of a more kind of woody character coming out of the beer too. So yeah, definitely a good little bit of woody note coming out of this one. So yeah, that's the base of this beer, like fresh white bread crust, a little bit of woodiness in there, and then you've also, as I say, you've got a little bit of a crackery note to this one as well. So yeah, in terms of the in terms of the malty side of things with this beer, it's quite nice as well. Like above the cracker, you do get this. There's a little bit of an almost like sweet wholemeal brown bready layer, and it's actually quite dense. So that's quite interesting. So yeah, definitely a wee bit of a more kind of dense wholemeal brown breaded character coming out of this one. Then above that, you start to get a quite dense white bready layer coming out of the beer, but toward the back of that white bready layer, you've got a little bit of the kind of clovey sort of spice coming out of the beer. But as you move further forward within that white bready layer, you start to get the sweeter kind of banana bready type flavours that I was picking up the aroma of those a little bit earlier on too. So that's kind of interesting. So yeah, the way that goes together. Yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. On the so the bready character really shows you a bit diverse, a bit of a more spicy kind of clovey sort of thing at the back, and then yeah, slightly sweeter banana bready character going further forward. Above that though, you do have more of a like I say, you do have a little bit of a more kind of sweeter aspect to the beer as well. So there's a little bit of, you do have a layer of it's almost like a kind of slightly dry honey. You do have a little bit of that sweet kind of honey layer there, but you can feel there's this more dense. On top of all that, you've got this circle in the middle of your palate where it's a more dense kind of brown sugary sort of thing. And it's quite hard to place my finger on exactly what it is. It feels like a really kind of dense honey type flavour, but it's also just got a lot of booze to it. So on top of the honey, you get a little bit of a kind of sweet McVitie's digestive biscuit going further out, but then you do also have a little bit of a more kind of like straight up sweet caramel right in the dead centre of your palate, but you can feel there's this boozy circle there where you've got this slightly, it's like a really dense brown sugar, but it's got a little bit of a kind of peary booziness to it actually, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, the middle of your palate in this beer is quite interesting, but this beer is definitely one of the more oily and boozy triples that I've come across. It potentially could do with just a little bit of a more bready character to it as well. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the way that that goes together is pretty nice actually. But yeah, border region between I think that covers the middle third of the palette incidentally. But yeah, the border region between front third and between middle third and back third of your palette, you've got a nice little bit of bready build up in there, which I think goes together really well. So you got that nice little bit of bready build up, a little bit of a white bready character in there as well. But then as you go onto the back third of the palette, you can feel that grainy bread crusty character is a little bit drier. For sure, as I've always said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palette, the more grainy, bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, the bread crust is a bit more grainy. You've got the Jacob's cream cracker above that, which is a little bit drier, and then you have all the then you have all of the fluffy then you've got that kind of, you've got a little bit of the wholemeal brown bread layer there, and that's a little bit taller and more airy. Then you've got the white bready character on top of that, and on the back third of the palette, that is definitely more grainy and slightly spicy as well, I would say. So yeah, that's quite interesting. So yeah, white bready layer, a little bit of a kind of brown bready type note. So yeah, the way that that goes together is quite nice. But above all of that, you can feel some of the biscuity sweetness that this beer has creeps over onto the top of that back third of the palate too. Then above all of that, you've got the more airy kind of yeasty sort of flavours coming out of it as well. So you've got this really light, airy mix of white and brown bread in there, but also a little touch of honeycomb as well. So that's quite interesting when it comes to this beer actually. So I like that, definitely. So yeah, back third of the palate you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you move into the middle third of your palate, you can feel the flavour just condenses down a little bit more and squashes together. So yeah, I do like how the malty side of this beer goes together, but definitely a little bit more boozy. It could potentially just do with a wee bit more kind of breadiness and sweetness from the yeast actually, this one. But let's go on to the green component and talk about the hoppy side of the beer then. So back corners of the palate, definitely a little bit of a kind of smoother earthiness in there, and as you come further forward along the sides of your palate, it develops a little bit more of a kind of spiciness. This does make me think that it's potentially Czech Sats or Zjatets that have been used in this one, just because of that slightly more spicy green component. So, little bit of an earthy note in there. So you've got a little bit of a herbal character too, and as you push further forward, you've got more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing with this one. But round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter sort of grassy type thing. So yeah, a little bit about, it's more, the grassiness actually has a little bit of pungency to it as well, which is quite interesting. That the green component in this one does actually resonate a little bit. So maybe this beer could have been aged just a little bit longer before I'm actually trying it. That might have helped it mellow out a wee bit more. So maybe it's a bit of my fault, this one. But yeah, the green component is quite pungent, but the slight spiciness of it makes me think it's more Czech Sats or Zjatets as it would be called, that is coming out of this one. But as I say, I like how it goes together, definitely. So in terms of the I think that's everything we need to say about the green component, but definitely a little bit of grassy zestiness on that front curve of your tongue. But let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in there, which I do think is very nice. So a little bit of bready build up, a little bit of that banana bread type quality, but also a wee touch of the spiciness. The base of that front third of your palate, you've got the bread crust, a little bit of the crackery notes, a little touch of woodiness. Then above that, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, there is actually like a little, I want to say there's a little touch of like grapefruit or something to this one, because there's just that little bit of pungent character to it. So I wonder, maybe is there a wee touch of like could they have put a little bit of Citra in this or something, or a little bit of Cascade? I don't know. I'd be very curious to know what hop they've used in this beer, because there is that little touch of grapefruit. I would be tempted to say Cascades just with some of the other flavours that are in there. But as you move further forward on the palate with this one, as you move further forward on that front 30 palate, you've got a little touch of the grapefruit there, but you've got this really oily, peary, kind of peary type quality. You've got some drier sultanas underneath, and as you reach the middle of your the middle of that front 30 palate, you've got like a little bit of dried apricot, and as you move into the front half of the front 30 palate, you start to get more like a kind of fresh green apple and maybe a little touch of like gooseberry or something underneath this one. These are all things that you can of course find in the Tripel, but yeah, there's just a wee touch of that more pungent grapefruity citrus in this beer actually, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, I do certainly like how this beer goes together, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, well done to Beerbliotek for doing something a wee bit different and trying a style that they haven't done before, but potentially it just needs a bit more yeasty and bready character. This beer, it could be refined that little bit more, but because it's quite a boozy Tripel, that's for sure. But yeah, I like that. I definitely like how that goes together. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, then say this beer is kind of top end and mid bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. It's got quite an oily and slick mouthfeel to it, but it's still quite clean at the same time. In terms of its in terms of the bitterness of this beer, I'd be surprised if it was more than sort of 20-25 IBUs. The malt base, as we said, it's got a little bit of dryness underneath, a little bit of oiliness, but it really leans towards a more oily and boozy side of things rather than anything else. The fruity character, like we said, it has a wee bit, for me, it has a little bit of a pungent grapefruit, but then a more oily, dry type quality coming out of it too. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really quite interesting. So yeah, I do like this one. And how it goes together in some ways, but I think, like I say, it needs that little bit more of a kind of sweet bready base to it for me to be up there with the best triples I've had. So yeah, quite an oily and boozy Tripel, this one. So if that's your cup of tea, you will enjoy this beer. For me, this one could just do with a little bit more refining, if you like, but I don't think Beerbliotek have done all that many triples. So yeah, maybe a bit more yeasty and bready character for me going forward if they do more of these. But yeah, still an interesting beer to try, I have to say. And we don't get to review many of these on the channel, of course, either. But yeah, this one was the Purely Selfish Reasons, number 345 in the Beerbliotek catalogue, a Belgian Tripel at 9.8% ABV. Definitely an interesting style to try, one we don't review all that often, so I'm glad I got to have a look at this one. And I hope you guys enjoyed my take on it as well. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Beerbliotek's social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Beerbliotek, and we will be returning to these guys again very soon, because they released another beer this month which caught my eye, so you'll see that in a few videos time. Slange it, Skull, cheers, see you guys in the next review.